Welcome to Like a Doss, the podcast where Ronnie Doss will share with you insights around life, legacy, and leadership. For more information about our resources, visit our website at dossteam.com. Now let's join the podcast.
Well, hello guys, it's Ronnie Doss. Welcome to episode 12 of Like a Doss. As always, I have the main man, Mr. Joel Bennett here. Joel, what's up, man?
Hey, Ronnie, it's been too long. I'm glad to be back with you. This is our 12th episode. People are clamoring for it all across the globe, and we're just happy to be in our seats.
Yeah, that's it. I got asked a few times in the last few days, I need a podcast. I was with somebody yesterday. They said, look, man, you got to do the podcast. I'm like, sorry, been so slammed, got so much going on, but no excuse. So we've got this back down, and you guys that are listening, I appreciate you, and appreciate you sharing this and all that stuff. So, Joel, what you got in the deck of cards today, man?
I'll tell you what, Ronnie, I've been thinking a lot about speaking and listening communication. Both of us have been doing a lot of work, traveling, doing a lot of different things, in a lot of different communications situations. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we're speaking with people who are, in a sense above us and, as far as authoritarian situations, or we're speaking to our own children, our spouses. And I just wanted to talk a little bit today about how we speak, what we're saying, the filters that we need to use when we're speaking, and then the flip side of that, how we hear things, how we're listening to things, and what filters we might be using when we're listening to someone else. So, sound interesting? You excited to get started on that?
Yeah, I am, bud. I mean, that's great, right? So I think the most important thing, obviously I'm a words guy, made a career now speaking. So, that's a big part of what I do. Many people use, public speaking skills to move them up upon the ranks and within their corporate ladder or within their organization. I chose to go this route just because of how passionate I am about helping people move forward. And I don't think that there's really anything that we have as far as tools to help people to move forward than our language and the words that we choose to use. I think that a lot of times people misuse their words. I think they speak too often and don't say as much as they really could if they would approach the situation utilizing their language and understanding that the less words you have to use, I believe the more powerful your words come across. And I just bought a T-shirt from a great friend of mine probably about 3 weeks ago, a month ago, and I actually wore it yesterday. It's a red T-shirt that says, "Speak less, say more." And, I think when we get the value of our language and that we're not lazy with our language and really look to refine our languaging, there's nothing that will move you faster towards success than being able to convey ideas, convey your passions in a clear, concise, articulate way. And, I've just seen guys that have mentored me, either directly or indirectly, to create phenomenal careers and reach across the globe and move people forward towards their goals and dreams using, the power of communication. And when people can really communicate well, I believe that it just opens unbelievable doors to go to another level in their life, in their career. And you get, you develop great relationships, I believe, when you can articulate what someone means to you, what they, how you see them, and learn to articulate ways of encouraging and empowering people. And I think, I've heard it said that the way a person can describe another person's character says a lot about their own. And so I think the more that we can learn to look for the good in others and then also learn to articulate that in others, I think it makes us better, man. Not only at home, but in the marketplace.
I think you're exactly right. And I think that, when you look back to when communication first started in your own life and in everyone's own life, the first time we're trying to communicate really is as a child, and you're trying to get people to hear you, to meet the needs that you have. So that was a motivation. As a child, you're like, you're not, really cognitively thinking this, but you're going, I need food. I'm hungry now. Wah. So there's a communication there. You want to be heard. So a lot of times what we need to realize is that we have motivation in our words. How do we deal with the motivation and make sure it's the right motivation with the words we're using?
Well, I think self-awareness is a big thing there. You always got to ask yourself, why am I about to say what I'm about to say? If you ever say anything too hastily, too quickly, you can destroy very quickly what has taken a long time to build when it comes to relationship. I've said it more times than I can count now, that most relationships are about as good as the last conversation that was had. And I think that's a sad thing, but in our day and time, when we have so much coming at us now, so many options, so many things to, distract us in a sense, if that's what you want to call it, it's easy to be fickle. It's easy to not really be deeply connected to anyone, because there's always something new, there's always something shiny coming along. And so on some levels, we don't have to watch what we say as much, because we feel like we have so many options when it comes to relationship. That, well, if this relationship doesn't work out, I'll just go over here and do this with these people, because, social media, I know where everybody's at and what they're doing. I can get engaged, get involved. That's what some people may feel. And you see that the depth of relationships, or many relationships, aren't quite as deep as maybe at some point that they were, maybe years ago. But, that's part of life. Things are changing. And so when you respond to something very quickly, Joel, without thinking about it, it can be very powerful to be off the cuff and say what you're feeling and be, really transparent, in the moment. And that's fine. However, if it's something that really is important, if it's a situation that requires some thought, that requires some strategy, I don't think we need to be responding to everything that gets thrown at us immediately. If you speak too soon sometimes, you can wreck the opportunity. A good idea at the wrong time is a bad idea. And a lot of times, what we'll do sometimes is speak to something at the wrong time. Say something because we feel we have an impulse to get this off my chest, to say what I need to say, and then you say it in the moment as a response or a reaction to what's already happened, and somebody else that's done it, that has said maybe something to you, is doing it at the wrong time as well. And so now you're fighting against each other with your words, looking to have the upper hand or the last word, so to speak, to win an argument. That, I just remember there's a story of a guy named Rick Elias, and he was one of the guys that was on the U.S. Airways flight that went down in the Hudson, with Chesley Sullenberger, Sully, that guy that Tom Hanks is playing the movie, right. I think that's coming out. And one of the things that he said is when he was on the plane, I think he was sitting in seat 1D, and they heard the bang, the explosion in the plane when they went through the birds, and he remembers Captain Sully coming on and saying brace for impact, and he said basically when he heard those words, because they had already aligned with the Hudson River, they had shut down the engines because smoke was pouring into the plane, and so he cuts off the engines, and Captain Sully comes on and says brace for impact. He said that he realized, a few things. And one of the things that he said he had spent much of his life trying to be right about things that didn't matter. And the second thing that he said he realized in that moment was that if he ever got back down on the ground, that he would be the best husband, best friend, best father that he could be. And he said it was in that moment that he just had this epiphany of, I might not get out of this alive, but if I do, I'm going to be more focused on being a good husband and a good father and a good friend to people than I am being right about stuff that probably just doesn't matter. And I think a majority of the time, Joel, we can get caught up in things that do not even matter. And we say something in a temporary situation that has permanent, repercussions. And you've got to be very careful. I'm good with words. I'm always reading psychology and leadership. I don't lose arguments. I just don't. A lot of people are like, man, you'd be a great attorney. You'd be great. I don't lose arguments. However, the fact of the matter is I don't get into them. I don't get into debates. I don't need to. I have nothing to prove. Nothing to prove. I will lead my life and set an example in how I live and how I treat people, more than what's just in my head about that I'm smarter than someone else. I don't get caught up in debates about theology, religion, politics. I just don't. And the reason that I don't is these things have been argued for thousands of years, and we see what's happened, and I don't get caught up in those. What I've decided to do would be to use my words, to use my mind, to move me forward towards what matters to me, and that's taking care of my family, and making a difference in the community, serving the people that I serve, to help them to get to where they want to go. And you got to be careful to, that you don't get caught up in things you don't need to be caught up in. And so you always just need to ask yourself, why am I saying what I'm going to say? Is it just to get something off my chest? Is it to win an argument because I have an inferiority complex that could be very subtle, that I need to look or appear smarter than someone else, that I always need to have the answers? When in fact, if we can just say, hey, I don't need to respond here. I don't have to say anything. I can simply give it a few minutes, give it a few hours, give it a day or two before I respond, and respond from a place of neutral as opposed to a place of hair trigger reaction to something that was said or something that was done that potentially I could take out of context anyway. So there you
go. Good. Sometimes silence is a good answer, right?
In conversations, Joel, if you can allow silence to do the heavy lifting, it makes conversations a lot richer. Sometimes you just taking a breath and just waiting before you respond. One of the coaching sessions that I did yesterday, I said a very powerful thing to say to someone when you're in conversation is, tell me that again, or tell me more about that, or what I heard is. And it lets someone know that you're interested in what they're saying, and if you choose to then repeat it back to them, it sends a message that they're heard. The biggest problem that we have in communication, I would say, or talking and so forth, is that we typically don't listen to understand. We typically listen to reply. And that's a problem. If I'm, like right now, I'm listening to you, of course, you want me to answer questions, and people listening, want to hear what I'd have to say about these things. But, in conversation, sitting with your spouse, significant other, your team, your family, if all I'm listening for is something that I can latch onto, jump on, and show you how right I am, how smart I am, this whole conversation then is about me proving something to you. It's not about the genuine connection. It's not about building rapport. What it's about then, if I'm just looking to answer without giving it a moment and allowing the silence to do what it can do and what only it can do, then what I'm looking to do instead of building relationships is I'm trying to build my image, build an ego. And the reason that I may feel I need to do that is because I believe unconsciously with these lenses and belief systems, that I'm always talking about, is that if I can build myself up and make myself look better, then you'll love me. You'll care about me. You'll respect me. If those are the things that I need in relationship, in conversation, a majority of what I do will be about that, instead of simply listening to what it is that you have to say and asking you questions because I'm interested in what you have to say, as opposed to just being interesting, always having the right answers. And so I think that we can use communication, our words, but our listening also, especially in that quiet time, to do the heavier lifting. Allow someone to say something to you, and you listen to it. And I think it was Aristotle, and I've quoted this before, that it's a powerful thing to be able to entertain a thought and yet not accept it as a truth. Some people rebut everything as soon as they get it. Well, that's not what I already believe. Well, you already believe because of a choice you've made, because of something you heard back then when maybe you had less knowledge than you do now, limited knowledge. And so I believe it's the sign, it's a powerful sign, it's a sign of intellect and intelligence, I believe is how Aristotle said it, to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it as truth. And this goes back to being open-minded. And so in any communication, I think one of the most powerful things that we can do is be very open-minded. We can listen and let people know with our listening, what we've called before generous listening and letting them know that their opinion and their view matters. And when people feel valued, it does make the conversation richer, and there's a chance of moving a person forward towards a desired outcome. And hopefully that desired outcome is that there's agreement, with what they want and where you want to support them in getting, and that it's not just all about you. So there you go.
I'm telling you, you're moving into my second blue card a little too early, so we need to back it up a little bit. No, okay. I'm just kidding you. That we're going to get into listening here in a minute because I have some things, but you actually have already bridged that. But I do have one more thing I want to talk about in communication. I think we need to protect what's coming out of our mouths to check to see if it's building up or tearing down. Are there any times that tearing down or deconstructing a situation or someone is a good thing, or should we always be looking to build others up, because when we're building others up, we're creating a better community and lifting everyone up. And like you've always said, with the water rises the whole boat. So
right.
we building people up with our words is so vital.
Yeah, it is vital, but there's really something powerful about speaking the truth in love. Mr. Clemmer used to tell me that results are often harsh, but they're always fair. You can look at what's being produced and find out what a deeper commitment has been. And so in conversation, if, let's say from the standpoint of me coaching people, and you know how many people that I'm coaching now and working with, it's really, I have permission to speak directly to them. You don't have that with just anybody off the street. I can speak directly to my wife. I can speak to her about something that maybe, not just anybody else could say. And there's not a whole lot with her, but I just mean I have permission, I have rapport, I have history. The main thing is that you have, trust. And, at NASA, where we're talking about the importance of developing trust and how important it is in an organization. And I just had a conference call with them today, actually, for about a half an hour. And some of it was around how, when there's no trust, there's not really healthy function. It's actually dysfunction. And when people won't open up and be honest about what they're experiencing, then that can cause a team to be fragmented. It can cause little cliques, and it can cause a lot of assumptions. It can cause people to feel that something's going on that may not be the truth. It's just what they're creating when there's not open lines of communication. And so, I think that there's a time and a place where you've got to tell the truth in love. And there comes a time for that. But you've got to be very careful that you don't come across as the person that's just using your tongue as a whip to try and smack people into place, when that may not be what they need. I've learned through just coaching people sometimes that I don't have to always have the right answer for them. Sometimes through wisdom and discernment, I can ask them the right questions and let them find or come to this conclusion, have this epiphany moment of, wow, now I get it. And they had it there the whole time. And so a lot of times you can use your words to draw things out. And the word education comes from I think it's the Latin word educo, like a water duct, to draw out. Socrates taught often using asking simply questions to draw out of someone else what was already there. And a lot of times, I've heard these old philosophers say that we don't really teach anybody anything. We just remind them of what they already know. And, you can use your words to do that. I think it would serve anyone listening here to make it your commitment to be the person that if you're going to speak, it's about raising the ships, not destroying them, not tearing them down, and making them think that they have to be rebuilt. I think that encouragement is a powerful thing. But there will come times when dealing with your team or your family that you have to speak the truth in love. But you just got to make sure that your intentions or the why behind it is not just about you getting something off your chest. That it's really about constructive, encouragement and lifting and building. Because when you get how powerful your words are, which I get now. I have people come to me and like, I've just been waiting to ask you this one question, or I get this email. And a lot of times I'll get emails that have very specific questions on them, and I don't just respond immediately. I'll read it, I'll read the email, I'll think about it, and I may go back to it the next day. And they go, this is what I believe. This is what I feel. And share that. Doesn't mean that I'm right. It's just I'm very careful with that. You can do a lot of damage with your words. So I think that we just choose to filter our words in such a way by asking, is this going to be something that serves this person to move them forward and not really do any damage? I think that's a wise place to be, and I think that's what real, true leaders that are compassionate and caring about the world, I think that's what they do. So.
I think it's great. I think a pause is always a good thing. I know that there are times when I've 2 or 3 instances are coming to mind, even we're sitting here, that if someone has said something, sent me an email, told me a story, whatever, that just flipped my switch. And I'm on the keyboard just tickety-tacking away, blah, 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 I'm going to get you, and just, pouring my guts out. And then I stop, shut it down, open it up an hour later, a day later, and look at it and read through and go, wow, got that off my chest. But that did absolutely no good for anybody. All that was gasoline on a fire. And
Absolutely.
Then I will rewrite and then hopefully get to the meat of what, my point was, or addressing their questions. And I think a pause is good. You're right. We're just an instant society. Sometimes when we pause, it will eliminate so many fires.
Yeah, and also, just for anybody listening, if you ever want to email me, the more concise that you can make it, great. I love when people send me things and they're like, hey, this, but it's a lot for me to read. It takes a lot of time to read. It's not that I don't want to, but when you got lots of stuff going on, sometimes reading a novel is tough. But it's always not those things aren't important. But and the reason I say that is I want to kind of preface it that I heard a good friend of mine who's friends with Dr. John Maxwell. And he said that, he used to get emails from Dr. Maxwell, and he would be like, man, at first he was kind of like, man, these are a little bit rude. They're short and to the point. But one of the things that he said John Maxwell taught him was that if you can say it in 9 words, you can probably say it in 7. And if you can say it in 7, there's a chance you could say it in 6. And so as you can learn to clarify and articulate in a more concise way an idea or a concept, without being brash or rude or short with anybody, but really just learn to articulate your words in such a way that the plane lands. Man, it's powerful. I know people that just run off at the mouth all the time and say nothing. You ask them one question and they don't answer the question. They tell you about their backstory, they tell you about what went on and all that, and they're like, and to answer that for this, that gets a little old. And when time is of the essence, which we know that it is, especially with more successful people, you don't have all day. You don't have all day to talk about, what all this went on. It's fun to do that, but I've learned that now there's less and less time for me to do that. And when I listen, I listen, I give it a moment, and then I respond. And I try to respond in a way that is clear and concise, that that won't take forever. And I've always heard this one phrase: a wise man speaks because he has something to say, but a fool speaks because he has to say something. And and I just think that's powerful. You don't have you don't just talk to talk. You really have something to say. So
wow, that's fantastic. That's something you can write down and tell yourself daily, and probably always get a good point out of it every day. Now let's flip the page. Let's talk about listening. Mm-hmm. You did this a little bit earlier, but we're going to hit it again. When people are talking to us, and you mentioned this, but let's hit it again, where you said, are you listening with a filter of, I'm responding with this, and you're working on your answer and your response before they've even finished their question or their point. Mm-hmm. That's a problem.
Well, it is a problem. So I don't know how much time we've got. We got, 5 minutes? So 7 minutes, let's say. This is a very, very important conversation, and so this might not be the place for it, but I'm going to throw it out there really quickly. There's 3 ways, basically, to listen. There's ways, and 2 of them, I've shared many times before, are inauthentic. Okay, so there's 3 ways to listen. 2 of these ways are inauthentic. The first way is to agree already without even thinking about what the person has to say. If I were to ask you, Joel, why do you think somebody would want to agree with someone even before that person got out of their mouth what they wanted to say? I know you would probably say, well, they want to be liked. They don't want to ruffle any feathers. They want to get promoted. They want to be what's called a yes person. And that's inauthentic. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I think it's nice to know and to be thinking about your career and so forth. But, and especially in a world where inauthentic is the way to go, or it seems to be the way to go for so many people. So people can listen, and agreement all the time can be inauthentic. You just agree before somebody gets out of their mouth. You're already, giving them the nod, like, yeah, this is awesome, it's great. That's more about you. And so what you're doing is you're actually listening to try and enhance a facade or an image that you've already built and that you're trying to maintain. Which is, if I can agree with Joel no matter what he says, then he'll like me. And I've got some pretty successful people that I'm around that I just don't say that. I say quite a bit. Said it today. I disagree with you on that. And I'm not afraid to say that, but I think people know that you're not just saying it for the sake of saying it to try to be smart. It's just like, on that I disagree because I think we could look at it this way. That's one thing, but most people will just agree for the sake of agreeing. That's one way. Not saying you can't agree because you really do agree, because they're right. I mean, that's not what I'm saying. But many times we just agree. We don't really listen to understand. We're listening to agree and build more of our own image, which is, I hope this person likes me.
Mm-hmm.
The second way is to disagree. And this is the kind of programming or belief system or lens behind, when you're talking to somebody, they've got their arms crossed, they're already, shaking their head no before you say what you want to say. And a lot of times this is, in no disrespect to the elders of the world, but a lot of times it's like, well, this is how we did it when I was growing up, and this is the way it's got to be. And it's tradition. And if you do it differently than that, then you're doing it wrong. When in fact, what we've seen is, the only thing that's constant is change. And even Jesus in the Bible said, because of your tradition, you nullify the word of God. Meaning if God's speaking to you, you're more caught up in doing things traditionally than hearing what is being said, so to speak. And so, disagreeing, sometimes you'll see people that often tend to want to disagree. They want to be the smartest person in the room, and they want to be in control. And so they're always shaking their head no matter what you say. They want to show you that they're superior, they're smarter. And if somebody on here is listening to this, you just need to watch that you do that. This is why what you said, Joel, is brilliant. There needs to be a pause before you respond. Just listen openly. Hands down, don't have to use your hands. Look someone in the eye. Listen. Listen. Nothing wrong with nodding your head a little bit or whatever, but listen for the sake of what's being said, to understand what's being said, not to continue to build this image you're trying to uphold, because that's what becomes, inauthentic. And then the third thing is what, I was taught. The third way to listen is to be with someone, or to be present. Mm-hmm. And, and Jen would say this to me sometimes. She's like, hey, I need you to be with me. Because, I got 1,000 things going. And when she says that, I know. It's like, okay, I'm here. I'm present. When you choose to be with someone and listening, it means that you erase everything else that's a predisposition or a judgment that you're bringing into the conversation in such a way that you don't have to filter everything through that predisposition or those assumptions already. You listen for what is being said, and you try to not let your mind run off in 1,000 different directions. If you can practice that a bit, and it sounds counterintuitive that they say something and you're like, oh, I need to be thinking about being present. Well, that's counterintuitive in a sense, but with practice you can do it. Is go, okay, let me pull back right here, right now. People talk about how time is precious. Well, time is not really precious in the sense that we usually use time as a measurement. Time, we think about the past. Time, we think about the future. But all we have really is what's right now, this moment. And so when we're listening in this moment, it's to be here fully present, to hear what is said for the sake of understanding, not to prove someone wrong or to appear smart or to control or to be liked. It's really to give ourselves to someone, to be fully present. And that's just listening with what I've called a blank sheet, or a white sheet, meaning there's nothing on it yet. And so you're just listening to what someone says instead of immediately, as soon as you hear something, you feel like you need to respond, or especially if it frustrates you, like you were saying, Joel, you have this lump in your throat and you've got this energy, or what I call a charge. You've got a charge on something and you feel like you need to vomit back on somebody. Well, see, you're not really listening there. All you're doing is looking to respond and to reply. And so, I think giving yourself a little bit of time, practicing that, you become a better listener. And I believe one of the greatest things that you can do to build relationship is to listen and learn to listen well. And as you do that, people will see this person isn't trying to convince me of anything. This person is not trying to get me to buy what they're selling, so to speak, or at least not right off hand. And they really seem to be more grounded and more mature. And listening is a powerful, powerful tool. And the quieter that we become, I believe the more that we can hear. And a lot of time in our day and age, there's so much coming at us. Our mind is running at 1,000 miles an hour. And, it's like a friend of mine always used to say, it's like you're running on a wheel. He said, some days you feel like you're running fast on the wheel. Some days you feel like you're running slow on the wheel. But either way, you're still on a wheel. You've got to learn to step off the wheel, be present, get quiet in your mind, quiet your mind. And then that's really how you really listen with a whole part of your being, not just with, your ears, so to speak. So that's a lot. I told you it could be a lot, and we could go long on that, but
it was good.
Done. Yeah.
I really think that good communicators are good leaders, and good leaders are good communicators. So I think today what you've shared with us has been incredibly effective. And if we can apply this, there'll be some changes and shifting that we're really gonna see. We're gonna sense that. So that's amazing. As we're wrapping up here, give us a nugget. It's been a while since we've had one of these, so I know you've got some words of wisdom you want to share.
I think this is great stuff, Joel. Communication and all that. Anybody listening, let me throw one little thing out. The word silent. I was thinking about this when you're talking. The word silent and the word listen are the same words. They just have letters rearranged. you know, and it's the same thing with reactive and creative. Same word, just rearranged, the letters are rearranged differently, right? And I think that, you know, it is, you can use any of these little, whatever, some people are like, the wisdom bombs are great, or the little nuggets of whatever, you know, it's great. But here's what I want you to know. The reason that you need, or I believe it would serve you, to listen to this, listen to it again, to share it, and try to implement anything that you can, is because this life is an absolute journey. It is. It takes time. I met today with a financial planner, and we were just talking about some of the growth and everything that's happened with me, and so we're starting to put new things in place for me, which, you know, haven't been there already, and it just means that there's some transitions going on to another level. But these things take time, and the journey that you're on, there are seasons that you walk through. Some are amazing, some might not feel so amazing, some you would say are just, you know, like hell on earth. But you know what they say you're supposed to do when you're walking through hell? You just keep walking. You know, just don't stop. And I talk to so many people that have decided that they need to rush the process, that they need to get it and get it done right now. And that's not the way healthy things grow. Healthy things take time. This journey we're on takes time. Be patient with other people. Extend grace, but not just to others, but also yourself. Being patient with yourself. Patience is a virtue, and the better you can get at being patient while you're listening, patient with how you treat yourself and others, the richer your life will be. And I believe that in the end, you'll look up and you'll be proud of what you've created. You'll have left a legacy, and you will have enjoyed the journey, which no point in trying to get there so fast if you're not going to enjoy the journey. So take a deep breath, enjoy it, and keep rocking. So, yeah, Joel, anything else?
That's it. Thanks, Ronnie. Good podcast.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day, and we appreciate you very much. We look forward to talking to you again very soon. Take care.
Thank you for joining today's podcast. The Like a DOS podcast is released every first and third Friday of the month. For more information, visit our website at dosteam.com.